Hello, 20s fam. Welcome back to our podcast. We are so excited to be here with you again. And today we want to introduce our very special guest, Paula Mafé. Welcome to 22. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you.
So we're going to introduce Paula, but we always prefer you to introduce yourself to have a little more background and what do you prefer to highlight. So can you talk us a little bit about you?
Yeah. Well, my name is Paula and I'm a psychologist. Well, I would like to explain why did I choose to study this career. I have a little brother, which is from Africa, is from Ethiopia. And the first time I saw a psychologist working, it was when he first arrived. And there were like 2 or 3 people at my home making just sure that he was okay. And it was like the first impression, it was like, oh, they are taking care of him. And it was like really important for me because he was healthy, but coming from a different country and having this difficulty with, of course, with the language and being so young, it was my assumption that he was going to be okay. But in fact, I realized that there are so many factors that can affect to that. And that's why I chose to study psychology. It was like, I want to make sure that everybody can feel safe and healthy and not just look like he's healthy, but in a mental way. And then I decided not to work in a room like in front of a person. It was like my soul is more like social oriented. So yeah, I would say I was always involved in this social work, and now I can do both. I can work in front of a person and talk about their specific life, but in fact, I'm also working at an association, so it's been like a different world to work in here.
That's so cool. I mean, for me, being like, that's also a really important occupation, and especially like nowadays, especially after the pandemic, a lot of people are realizing how important it is to have, people to share, but confidentially or, for different things. So I think it's super cool. I'm curious because this is kind of my first time meeting you. How long have you been in the profession and, where are the different places or countries you've worked at?
I've started in my career in 2016, I think, yeah. And I studied in Valencia for 6 years, more or less, for 6 years. But I choose to study my career in English, mostly because in order to investigate and to make a good research, there are so many documents in English and not that much in Spanish. Yeah. So in order to fully understand psychology, I choose to study it in English.
Great. So what is the thing you enjoy the most about being a psychologist lately?
I think it is not just the result, but the process you can see in your patients. Because it's like, it's even exciting when you can not only see the result when the person is more or less okay, but you can see how they understand the process and how they value the process as well. I think that the process would be my answer.
That's really nice to hear, especially because, well, I didn't say this at the beginning, but Paula has been my therapist for a while, since I actually arrived a month after I arrived here in Valencia. And she has been really helpful. Actually, she's my first psychologist I've ever had in my life. And it was such a nice experience. So I was talking to Mai and just thinking that we could definitely invite you to our podcast because there's so much insight and things that I sometimes as a person, we don't consider of our personalities or like, yeah, it's just very nice to have someone that is so expert in dealing with certain topics. And that's why we come up to the idea of talking a little bit about healthy relationships. So now introducing a little bit the topic, we want to know a little bit about in your career or maybe lately, because, time changes and people change also. What are the main concerns of people in their 20s right now in terms of friends, family, or love relationships?
I think, and And I would like to connect my response with what you said about the pandemic and all of this difficult situation. I think the 20s is the time to reconnect. So when we are teenagers, we mostly look for our friends and social relationships as they are, like neutral and not that deep. But when we start growing up, we start to look more for this kind of attachment with real people. Maybe our friends from teenagehood, we don't match them anymore. So we tend to look more about this attachment, but not in an unhealthy way, but in a way that we are looking for something special in our relationship. It doesn't matter if we are looking for a friendship or a couple relationship. We are always looking for that sense, that meaning of why do I have to keep this person in my life, or whether if maybe I shouldn't.
Yeah, it's like the questioning side of like whether we want a person to keep a person and work on the relationship or not, which is actually something that we live pretty often talking about Mai and I there.
Yeah, I guess like in your, your daily work, do you come across a lot of people in their 20s, or is your, your consultancy much broader scale? And how do you find the differences between each of these age groups in terms of, the struggles that they bring to you? Are there common themes across all the 20s, 30s, 40s, or are there some slight differences that you can see across the age groups?
Well, I would say almost all the questions that you can ask me, I would say that the best response is it depends.
Yeah.
Because maybe, for example, as I said, when you are a teenager, you are not looking for something. You just want to have a social club or something like that. So to make a group and to have like lots of friends. And then you start to be more selective and more critic. And you start to make your own judgment about who I'm with and what I want about that person. Or even we can ask, what can I offer to that person? And yeah, I think the difference is this kind of impulsivity. Because when we are a teenager, we are not thinking about what does this person give to me. We are always like, yeah, we can be together, we have fun, and that's all. And then in our 20s, we start to think and to overthink.
Yeah.
So what are some exercises talking about like this overthinking? Because it's something that definitely we all do at any time of the day, probably every day. So what are some exercises that we can do to have a peace of mind when we just can't stop overthinking about keeping someone in our lives, about just our family being far, like different contexts maybe?
Well, it may sound as a cliche, but I would say mindfulness is a good way to start being here and now, and not start to imagine and thinking about maybe our past or our future. So it is like there are some good exercises about meditation and breathing exercises that help us to exactly do that, not to think, but to let our brain think. Because we always tend to avoid these thoughts, and in fact you can't avoid them. They are there and they are going to stay there like every day in your life. But once you start to see them as they are, as thoughts, you start to relax more. Because it's like, yeah, I don't want to avoid this to happen, but at the same time, I know it. It happens to me. I overthink. And maybe it's not a good thing for me to overthink now in this moment, but I will let these thoughts come through and I will let them as they are, thoughts.
Okay, just accepting and changing the perspective that is not pressure, but just something that will come and go. Nice.
That's cool. Maybe perhaps we could do a small little exercise. Is there anything that we could do collectively as, the three of us and for the people that are listening that, maybe when we're overthinking or stressing or any of that, could we maybe do a little bit of it?
I thought about one of my favorite exercises that it's and in fact, it's a good way to get to fall asleep as well. So I use it as as this, as a tool to sleep. So it is like, first we need to, of course, we should be in our bed or something like that. But yeah, the first of all, it's we close our eyes and we are going to imagine like a ball of light in our front head. So in here, we imagine we have a little light, which is really bright. And this ball is going to flow through our body. So it goes down to our nose. And this light, it's also a little bit hot. So we can feel the heat in our nose. And now this ball goes through our mouth. It goes down our body to our stomach. We let it here. We always try to focus on our breathing, and we start to think about this little ball being up and down according to our movement. Then it goes up to our shoulders and goes down. We can feel now the ball in our left hand. We can feel it and even touch it. Then it goes up again, goes through our shoulders, our chest, and travels to the other hand. And we can now feel it in our hand. The fact that we are concentrating in this ball, it doesn't mean that we don't have any more thoughts. In fact, we have them. Maybe we can still be thinking this is a silly thing. But in fact, we are focused in our ball of light, and we let these thoughts to come in and come out. This could be a little version of the exercise, because it is thought to be with our whole body and stopping in even every muscle. But it is a good way to think about that we can be focused in our ball of light, but at the same time, we are going to be thinking. We can stop that. But it's a good way to change the perspective about these incoming thoughts.
Well, I feel so much more relaxed now. That's so cool.
Yeah, just like being more conscious of and being more present, I guess, somehow. Yeah. Well, now moving a little bit into the topic of healthy relationships, how can we just build like a healthy relationship first, like with ourselves? Like, what are some tips you can give in that to just not have negative thoughts, to have a healthy relationship also with our bodies and, ourselves?
I think that is a good question, but a difficult one. I think that's too difficult because we live in a society that empowers our productivity and our body, but in a physical way, not in a healthy way. Because we always tend to look at our body and to see our not good parts of us, and we don't look at them as, for example, I know some good exercise in which you need to say what are the parts of your body that you don't like. And for example, I'm going to give you an example. When I did that to one of my patients, he told me like he didn't like his hands. And he was a musician. So it was like, how could you say that? Because we are focusing on the physical way of our body. We are focusing on, do I look pretty or not? But we don't focus on how useful we can be with this part of your body that you think it is ugly or something like that. But I think that's really difficult because of the society. We always put like the eye on the bad things, and we don't put it in the practical things. I'm not saying even beauty. You can still hate your hands because you don't like how they can see them. But you can change as well the perspective and see them as a tool, as a really good tool in which, in fact, you are working with them. So, yeah, I think it's a tricky question because at the same time, we always try to do our best to love ourselves, and we can also accept that there are some parts of us that we don't like.
Yeah.
And that's also it's a cool thing. What if we all think we are perfect? That would be even boring. It's like
dealing with egos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm a little curious. So for you personally, when you were going through like some hard times, and I'm sure like all of us, especially as like women, we also have like certain insecurities with whatever it is there's in society, like our body image or weight or whatnot. So for you, how did you kind of overcome those things? And are there actually any practical things that you went through, or like people that you looked up to, or anything that you were reading at the time that you were going through those insecurities?
I'm going to be like really honest. I went through anorexia when I was like 15 or 14 or something like that. And I think that were the most, the awful years of my life. But in that period of time, I didn't think that. I thought I was pretty and I was enjoying, I was thin, it was like the beauty, and then now I see myself when I was younger, and for me it's just, you were so naive in life in general, because you were thinking and focusing your attention in your body, and even more in punishing your body to fit society. And what about my goals? What about what I really want to become? Because I don't want to become a thin person. I want to become a good psychologist. And that's different. That's a different point of view. So in fact, I didn't have nobody to look at and to admire. But at the same time, it was a really good advice for myself, because it was like, why do you want to look at someone to be someone else? Just don't look at someone else, and look at you and empower yourself and see what are the good things you have. But yeah, that's difficult too.
Yeah, of course. So it's, for you, it was more like focusing on what you actually wanted to do. And again, as the functionalities that you were talking about before, it's like a little bit switching the perspective in like, well, I have this, what can I do with it? Like in terms of your hands, in terms of your legs, like it's hard, but sometimes we appreciate things when we don't actually have them, or like when something goes wrong. And it's sad that it's a little late sometimes, but I think it's also a little bit in training our perspectives and our minds to see it in a real more positive and functional way, I guess, right? Nice. So now moving a little bit more into relationship with other people, how can we set boundaries? Let's start with friends, I guess, because that's also a little more, complex.
I think the first thing you need to know, it's your own boundaries. You can't set boundaries with other people if you don't even know which are your boundaries. Because, for example, for some people, that other lie to them, it's a boundary, but maybe for me it is not. Because it's like, for me, it's a reasonable way to keep a relationship. But if you don't know your boundaries, it is because you have let them to pass like any time, and you are not even conscious that you have the right to have your limits. Because we are sometimes, for example, and it happens mostly with our family, we always, and it's mostly here in Spain, we are like, give 2 kisses to the grandpa, give 2 kisses to somewhere else, to meet someone. And this should be our first boundary. What if I don't want to kiss that person?
Yeah.
I'm just I'm just a 5-year-old girl, and I can't say no. But in fact, we are grown up as this. So it is really difficult to first notice that you have the right to have boundaries, and then to know your own boundaries. So I would say, to set boundaries, first you need to know your boundary. And that is the most difficult part. Because then when you are strong enough to know your boundaries, you're ready to set them. Yeah. But first you need to accept yourself to make that. And I would say that the first boundary becomes with childhood and with you being pushed to meet people and to be smiley all the time. Yeah. And now when you grow up, maybe you're antisocial. So it's like, it was my boundary and I didn't know that, and now I know.
But I feel like those boundaries change over time as you meet more people and you're more mature. And what you just said doesn't just apply to friends, but also family and also partners, obviously in a different way, right? So I'm curious, like for you in terms of friendships, for example, we meet a lot of people in our life, but to call them like a friend or like a bestie or whatever, it's just very different. So how do you in your personal life, like, what does your circle of friends look like? And how do you maintain those kind of relationships with the people who you care about?
I would like to answer this with a sentence that I learned. And it is like, if you don't put your expectations that high with a person, then you will not let them to disappoint you. So it's like the higher expectations you put on someone, the more disappointed you will get. Because it's like, we know others are not perfect and we are not as well. So I would say I would put the same expectations for others than I put to myself. So if I want someone to be at any time, at any moment, if I want to have this kind of attention like every hour, then I should offer the same. And that's when it comes the truth. I wouldn't do that. I mean, it's not a mean way of acting. It's like maybe not selfish as well. It's like looking for me. Because if I don't want to pay attention to my friend 24 hours, 7 days a week, maybe I shouldn't ask him or her to do that with me. So I think it's more about expectations. And also we tend to focus the expectations on the other person, but we are also a very important part of our relationship because we are involved in that relationship.
So moving forward with the expectations and boundaries, we have a very common thing right now, which is the red flags and green flags. So, which is a really controversial topic most of the times because, again, perspectives and different persons think different. So something that is a green flag for me might be a red flag for other persons. So what are some red flags and green flags for you as a professional that you detect in romantic relationships? Like, what are some things that we shouldn't allow and some things that maybe are a little controversial, but they're not as bad as calling it a red flag, probably?
Well, I would say the first thing is the control. You can know where your partner is, but in fact, it's your partner who is allowing to you to know that. You cannot pretend to that this person gives you the information as this is, as an information. Because when you try to control someone or when you are being controlled by someone, you kind of never get this pleasure time. It's like you're always trying to make sure that the other person is relaxed and kind of calm about where you are or what are you going to do. And at the same time, you are not relaxed and calm until that person shows it to you. So it's like it comes in both ways. It could also be the judgment part, because you can ask for a friend or for your partner to give her opinion or his opinion about what you're wearing, for example. Do I look pretty? Do you like it? But at the same time, if this opinion is not asked, then you shouldn't give that opinion. Because it's like, I didn't ask for that. And it could be controversial because it's like, I'm saying because if you're good and I want you to know my opinion. It was just my opinion, but I didn't ask that. Yeah. That would be the most controversial one.
Okay, yeah, that is actually very common, for people that are not updated in terms of machism. I think it comes a lot from the education from past years. And it's hard to deconstruct also ourselves in that way as a person and also as being a partner. So focusing now on the red flags, how can we communicate a little bit better about like maybe mixing it with the boundaries we want to set, and like what are the things we allow in a relationship? Just talking to my partner like, hey, I don't like you to do this, so let's don't do it. Or like how can we communicate in the best way that it's not bad for our partner but also doesn't affect the relationship as a whole?
I think it is not that difficult. We think it is difficult because it is emotional involved. So when we set our boundaries or when we detect a red flag, we want to say, like, since the very beginning, you want to say it out loud, don't do that. But we have emotions and we're like, I don't want to be mean. I don't want to get this person goes away from me. And you're always thinking about what if the other person, no, but the first person you need to think about is yourself. Yeah. And if this is my boundary, I can say it even out loud and shouting if I want. But yeah, of course it is difficult because there are emotions involved. And in fact, emotions can, make a big disaster or a really good quality relationship. And I think it is not about the communication. It is about the step that you need to do before you communicate. It's like empower yourself and believe that you are not going to be mean because you set a boundary. Yeah. You are going to be honest with yourself.
Yeah, because in the long term, if you don't do actually something, it's going to affect in another way probably. Or like, just like you decide to end the relationship because you're keeping all these things to yourself. And it's like a hard questioning that when should you do it or when is the right time. And sometimes I guess there's not even a right time. You just sit down and you just have to do it, right?
There are expectations. I feel like for relationships, it's impossible to go in without having certain expectations. But I think it's important, like you said, to also communicate with them some of the needs that you want, or maybe where you are in like that certain period. Maybe you don't want to commit yet, but you want to explore or something. It's just having that transparency, I think, it's really important. You can have fun, but just be transparent about it, right?
Exactly. And always try to let your partner or whoever it is to know it. Maybe I am creating without wanting to do that this person is creating expectations about me that I'm not going to. So it is difficult. But the most important, I would say, is that the communication part in which I can be honest, but not just with you, also with myself.
Yeah, we're actually discussing that. What was last week, I think. We were talking about like how, because Mai is a little like, was upset about like the culture in here last week. And I was like, yeah, Mai, like when I started dating my boyfriend, the first week I told him, hey, I'm not into open relationships. I'm into exclusivity. And
I think that's a smart way.
Yeah, I was like, and don't make me waste my time because I'm not up to that, you know. And it might sound pretty scary. Like I was like, well, if he gets scared, then that's how it's supposed to be, you know, like, and it's not like, it sounds scary to do it. I don't know why I did it. I think it was the first time I did it, but I was like, if I don't do it, I know I'm gonna be affected if we don't have the same expectations. And also because, as you said, like we came here in Berkeley, we have a lot of students from all the world, and you start hearing about, I have an open relationship and stuff. So I was so scared about that, like coming from a, you know, like a very, I'm thinking Spanish, but like a very conservative country where that is non-negotiable for me. So you need to make sure somehow that the person you're dating wants at least the similar things as you're looking for, because then again, you kind of waste your time, I guess.
But I'm going to say something more. Maybe he was expecting that. Yeah. Maybe he was like crossing their fingers. He was like, please tell me you want exclusivity.
But yeah, it's funny, but I guess it does saves a little bit of time in terms of the questioning. And also it's part of the peace of mind we were talking about. Like the more you know what your partner wants, is the more you are calm about that you're fitting into that and he's fitting into what you need. Yeah. So now talking about the green flags, I guess we have two sides of the coin, you know. What are some things that we mostly should consider as green flags that that might like question us things, because I don't want to go to the most basic stuff like being honest and like being loyal stuff, but like talking a little bit about the controversial side of like communication or things that we can actually question that are not bad but might be bad for some people.
I think also like mindset or some of the differences that you can't like, you know, just avoid, like religion, like culture, like I don't know, the previous background, previous dating experience or any of that. You know, it's like how
I would say it is important to have knowledge about your partner, but also to give knowledge about you to your partner. Because it's not about communication, it's also about empathy and comprehension and kind of loyalty, but not in a couple way, but in a sense that you can feel you're going to have a healthy relationship with that person. I don't care if it's a friend, a family, or something. But in fact, it's about knowledge. If I know this, I don't know, for example, a topic that you want to discuss, if I know it is difficult for you, I will approach it different way that if I don't know that. Because maybe for me it is a normal topic to talk about or to discuss or something, as for example, religion. But what if he or she comes from a difficult situation in which they have gone through something bad related with that, and I don't know it? I can hurt their feelings. But at the same time, they can hurt my feelings because their response is going to be in a negative way, and I wouldn't be expecting that. Yeah. And I would be like a chaos, like, what is happening here? But yeah, I think green flag would be the first thing. It's knowledge and respect for the other one. Because if I know something is hurtful for you, then it shouldn't be. Yeah, it shouldn't be a pressure for you to talk about that or to share it with me, or even to talk with other people. Because maybe if we are in maybe in a group of friends, maybe if we know that this topic is difficult for one of them, maybe I shouldn't come up with this topic. Yeah. I don't care if the other 19 people are not concerned or are not hurt about that. But if there is just one people, then I should like take care, at least take care.
Nice. So in terms of like differences, because we come a lot to that, and I personally like I always talk to Mai, and I also mentioned to you that before it was for me so easy to see differences, say like, I don't like this, bye. And sometimes it is pretty easy, I guess, especially in your early 20s, like just putting it in a timeline. How do we actually, or what is the most mature way to deal with differences in terms of education or just like principles, you know, or values? Because there are some things that for me might be wrong, but for my partner might be okay because of that context he comes from or she comes from, you know. So how can we actually approach, or what is the perspective or openness we should have to these differences we can detect on a stage of our relationships?
Well, it is difficult, but not because of the differences, because of we create as, for example, an idea about this person, and maybe the idea that I created about them, they don't match with my own idea of myself. So it's like, if I imagine this person, it's going to be like really respectful, really, I don't know, empathetic, and then when the first time you're seeing he's not being respectful, it should be a red flag. But at the same time, you use your empathy and you start thinking, okay, maybe he was going through something difficult. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he had some bad news recently. So now it's your balance. And it really depends on each in specific personalities. Yeah. Because maybe my balance should be more like, let's be empathetic and adapt. And maybe others, they are more like, I don't want to meet more that person. Because I heard one thing, it annoyed me, and now it's my limit. Yeah.
I mean, the next topic I kind of want to bring up is like marriage. I know we're both in our early 20s, but I also have a lot of friends who are getting married in their early 20s, not just late 20s, and people are getting married at different like stages and ages. So how do we know, when is the right time, and like how do we like make that next step, because it's a very important step, especially for me as like a woman. I'm like, this is huge, and I want to make sure that I'm prepared for marriage. Like, what are some considerations and things that I need to have? Because it's not just love anymore. It's also you have to be realistic about, okay, you're going to spend like hopefully a lifetime with this person. Your work, your family, your everything is going to change a little bit or a lot depending on, where you are in your life, your career, where the location is of you and your partner. And then eventually like the topic of like having kids and so many things. So I guess,
I guess also here, like we can bring it up since the stages of a relationship, and like the questionings you should have between each stage, just like putting it in a timeline,
I'm going to answer you in a fast way. You are ready to get married.
Come on, guys, I'm ready.
But you've taken into account so many things.
Okay.
So you've thought about that in a deep way. Because maybe if I know someone who is like, I want to get married and get dressed in a white dress and be a princess. Yeah, me too.
This is her question, so she's actually ready though.
But yeah, in fact, if you have already considered everything, because you even mentioned kids, so it's like you've gone farther. I think it is more about, how do I know if I'm ready? Well, if I have asked myself that many questions, maybe I am ready. But a different thing is to take that step forward and do that. Then it is different, because if you're ready and you think you're ready, maybe you need this time to consider and to think about how it's going to change my life if I get married. And at the same time, if you are, for example, if you are not sure about that, if you don't think it is going to be a good way to see your future or something like that, maybe you shouldn't. So it's like, what if we stop questioning and wondering about ourselves, whether if I'm ready or not, but start to think, okay, if I want that, I'm going to make like the pros and the cons. So let's wait out. If I do really want that, I'm sure I'm ready, because I've considered all the different things that maybe I have been doubting about that, and that is a good thing, a good thing to know when you are ready. I doubt that much, and at the end, I know I'm ready. But if I didn't even doubt about anything, it's like, okay, take it seriously.
But how do you bring it up to your partner? Because I feel like sometimes guys are scared to take this, or I guess like the expectation is the guy will propose, and it's not the girl. But I'm like, well, I'm ready, so I want to have this conversation. But it's always like really hard to bring that up. Maybe it could cause this relationship to go in a different direction, or if they are ready and then you're like, oh my gosh, I guess, like we can do it now, or, it's like, how do you do it?
Maybe I should use a friend. Like, we also tend to look for this serious conversation, but maybe I can come home a day and say, well, my friend is thinking about getting married. What do you think? He's in his early 20s.
Yeah.
And just know about their opinion without implying yourself. And then you can judge. You can say, okay, maybe he's showing himself maybe scared or maybe excited but immature, something like this. You can see how this person reacts.
Yeah, so in terms of realizing that you actually want to marry with the person you are, because it's sometimes, I guess, like knowing yourself, you know that you are what you want and if you're ready. But if the other person is not, or if the other person just doesn't have this in mind, how do they actually get into the realization that they could do it. I think sometimes it's a little random. Well, I'm gonna talk about boys, but what I've heard from experiences around me is that they just saw something and they realize, oh, like the idea just came up, and they just stick to it. For us, it's a little more complex, like the line of thought sometimes. So what are these like? What is usually like the line or the stages that everyone like should start to consider? In which stage, or like what are the surroundings of this thought? Like, hey, maybe we're ready. Like how do you get into that?
Okay, so I'm going to answer first in a very technical way, because there are like 4 stages in a romantic relationships. So I would say it would be in the 4th, in the last one. Because at the beginning, you're like euphoric, you have already known that person, and you're
like... What are the first 3 stages?
Yeah, the first stage would be like the euphoric one, in which you kind of don't know that person that much, but you're like interested. You want to know more. Then it comes the early attachment, in which you decide that you consciously choose, I like that person, I want to be with that person. It doesn't matter if you want exclusivity or open, it doesn't matter. You want that person in your life. Then it comes the crisis and the big, the big chaos. And then it comes the 4th stage, in which you want that late attachment, in which you have already known that person in a good way, in the euphoric stage, but also in the crisis stage. So you kind of know all the from all the perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, how can you know that you are going to be with his or her your whole life? I would ask this question: what are you afraid of? I mean, what if you're wrong and you marry the wrong person? It doesn't. I mean, you've made that decision when you were sure, and now you're not. Okay, let's change your decision. I mean, there's of course you don't want to hurt others' feelings, but at the same time, if at first I was thinking about marrying you, and now we are married, and now I realized, and now I change my opinion, I could be wrong, and now I can be right. Or even before, I can think I was right, but now I can change my opinion. And so why are we afraid of failing in this about marriage? I mean, there's nothing that can stop us to break this relationship. I mean, you're married, you're not joined together for life. So it's like the idea of getting married. It's not a fact that, I don't know, it's something you can't die if you divorce, or even if you don't divorce, if you finish the relationship. But we are always like afraid of that, because we always tend to think, okay, they made that decision, then it has to be But in fact, we can change our minds, and it is easier when we are children, because we are like, I don't like this boy, I don't want to be your friend, but tomorrow maybe I want. It's difficult,
but it's true. Even if you're engaged, you're not forced to get married. Like you can also change your mind, which is like, people don't really like that, but it's completely valid if you just regret your decision somehow.
And maybe there are some other situations in life, because for example, if I'm getting ready, I even have a date for my wedding, and then I don't know, 2020 starts and the pandemic, and so it's like, okay, it was not a right choice to marry this year, but it is not a failure. I mean, you've made a decision, now you've changed your mind. Okay, like life keeps going.
Or you walk down the aisle like in half of the Hollywood movies, and you're like, oh, I don't feel like anymore. And your friends and families are just there like, I did not fly here just for this.
Well, that would be a fun experience to see, but not to leave.
Yeah, no, exactly. Please.
Don't manifest that in your life. Come on.
This has been a great conversation. I did not know you before this, but now I'm really glad we had this conversation, and it's been a lot of very different from our previous conversations in the podcast. So just to wrap up, do you have, I guess, like any advice for people who are in their early 20s and their 20s in general related to, any of the topics that we have today? If you could like just give them 3 tips on how to be a better version of themselves, anything that you may be drawing from your experience or people and clients that you've talked with, any of that for our listeners.
Okay, I would like to say like 2 different things. The first thing is that don't put your expectations that high, not even for yourself, but also not for everyone else, because the higher expectations you put in your life, then maybe if you fall, it will be worse. But at the same time, I would say like the other part, it is accept you can fail. Accept you're going to overthink, you're going to have negative thoughts, you're going to hate some of your parts of your body. So accept it. We are all humans and we do all go through this. So we all have negative thoughts. We all set higher and super high expectations, and then we fall down and we feel like really bad. But it is like this balance. I have a sentence I like I really like it, which is life is the same amount of smiles than amount of tears. So it is about that. It's like finding and looking for that balance. Not just be super happy and don't have negative thoughts, because that's not reality. It's to find this balance between the negative and the positive thoughts.
So nice. It's been really, really nice to have you here. We're so happy that you joined us in our podcast. Thank you so much. We've been enjoying a lot the conversation, as Mai says, and also learning a lot. It's really nice to know more about you in a different way, because of course, when you have therapy, you don't get to actually know a little bit more of the context. So thank you so much for joining us. And well, we're glad to see what you're doing next in the next times. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for listening to this episode. We really enjoy all of the conversations we have, but sometimes we take it, in a deeper way. And we hope that season 2 can provide you a lot of insights into, how do we navigate your 20s and even further 30s and 40s, because these tips they aren't just limited to people who are in their 20s. It's really life tips in general. So we really appreciate you being here, and thank you guys for listening. Tune in next time.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.